All right, guys, so this is the page that we are going over in this video. Make sure that you have the correct page, right? There were 2 worksheets, and I believe that there were 5 examples on one and 6 examples or problems on the other. So in this video, we are going over the one that has 5 problems total. So please make sure you have the one that looks like this, okay? So let's get started. We are reviewing decimals and looking at fractions and rewriting them as decimals. So for example number 1, they want to know the value of, and I would read this mixed number 4 and 3/10 in decimal form. Well, this number 4 is our whole number. And then when I say the word and, that's referring to the decimal point. And 3/10, well, I know that tenths is the very first place value, so that's going to be 4 and 3/10. A trick that another teacher taught me one time was that when you look at tenths, you can see that there's 1 0 right there, and that's just one place value past the decimal point. So, for example, if you had 4 and 3/100, so now I'm kind of changing it, that one would be written as 4 and you need 2 zeros, meaning 2 places past your decimal point, and that's where you'd plug in the 3. So then this one would obviously be a 0. Do you see the difference? So 1 0 for tenths, 1 decimal point or 1 place value past the decimal point, 2 zeros for hundredths, 2 places past the decimal point. That was just a trick another teacher taught me. Let's look at example number 2. So we have 2 values that are shown, and we would read this decimal as 45 hundredths, and then we would read this one as 12 hundredths. So I told you guys to think of that as money, right? To think in your brain money and think of that as like 45 cents. And then think of this one as 12 cents, so 12 hundredths, right? We know that this could kind of represent like a whole dollar right here. That's the dollar, or 1 whole. We know that your dollar is broken into 100 equal parts, right? 100 pennies. And right here, we have to plot on the number line 45 hundredths. Well, I know that at about halfway, which would be about right here, that would be 50 hundredths, right? That's kind of what I'm thinking in my brain. So I know that 45 would be just slightly before this. So maybe like right here. So I can go ahead and label that on my number line. So that would be 45 hundredths. Then if I were thinking about 12 hundredths, right? That would kind of be that dollar broken into 10 equal parts. And I know that I'm not going between 1 and 2 because I don't have a whole number here. It's 0, so it's a number less than 1. So it's between 0 and 1 on my number line. So that was 0.45, right? If this was the 50 mark or the halfway between 0 and 1, right? Then we need to think, okay, so broken into 10 equal parts, that would be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I know that's kind of messy, and this doesn't have to be perfect, but if I can see right here that that would be about 10 hundredths, then just right past that would probably be my 12 hundredths. Now, is it okay if it's a little bit off from mine? Absolutely. This is not going to be perfect. We are not machines. Mine is not perfect. But that's where I would guess for those points to be. And let's look at example number 3, moving right along. We had to match each fraction with the equivalent decimal notation. So you're given a table here, right? And this looks like to me 8, and it's just one place value over. So if we're thinking about that trick that the other teacher taught me, 1 means just 1 0, right? Or tenths. So that's like 8 tenths. And then what about this one? I see 2 zeros, so I'm thinking of 1 and 2 zeros, hundredths. And that's an 8 in that place, so that's 8 hundredths. Well, 8 hundredths I just said is this one, and 8 tenths I just said is this one. But let's focus in now on this one right here, 80 hundredths. Now, I know that 8 tenths, what I do to the bottom, I must do to the top, and I could add that 0. But let's think about that for a minute. Maybe this will make sense. I did this with Camilla and Kaylee on our math meeting one day. It was just the 3 of us. And we said that if Camilla had 8 tenths, right, that would mean that she took the dollar bill, right, $1, and broke it into 10 equal parts. So if you were going to break a dollar into 10 equal parts, then Camilla told me you would need dimes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, right? So she went to the bank and she traded out her dollar for 10 equal parts, so they gave her 10 dimes. And if you had 8 tenths, then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of those dimes. So you have 80 cents in your pocket, right? That's how much Camilla would have. Now let's say that Kaylee goes to the bank and takes her dollar, so that's the whole, $1, and she wants to trade that into hundredths, or 100 equal parts. She would get pennies, right? And we did this crazy drawing of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we know you'd have to do 10 of those. So we ended up getting really messy and we just drew this like scribble, but we knew that that meant there were 10 pennies, right? And then we had 10 rows. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So again, went to the bank, got 100 pennies. Now, if she has 80 hundredths or 80 of those, that means 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. She still has 80 cents in her pocket. So these are actually equivalent, aren't they? 8 tenths and 80 hundredths. So 80 hundredths is the same as 8 tenths. You're just adding on the 0 down here and then the 0 up here. All right, example number 4. Which decimal is equivalent to 1/10? Well, we know that tenth means it's just one place past the decimal point. So let's look. 10, no. 1, no. So we've narrowed it down. Well, this looks like 2 places past the decimal point, so the correct answer is C. Example 5, the last one. Select all the fractions that are equivalent to 2/10. So again, the decimal is 2/10, right? And I know that because it's just one place past the decimal. So I can see one place, 1 0. So 2/10. Well, is that equivalent to 10 halves? No. What about 100 halves? No. If you divided that, that would be the whole number 5. And if you divided that, 100 divided by 2, that'd be the whole number 50. That's way off. That's not the same as 2/10. Let's look. 2 hundredths? Nope. 2/10? Yes. Now what about this one? 21 hundredths. Well, that's what we just set up here, that if you had 2 dimes or you had 20 pennies, you still have the same amount. So this one is equivalent as well. All right, that's the first part of your decimal review. There will be a second video to go over the second worksheet.